Meantime, there are growing questions about President Biden's relationship with China. It comes amid new reports the U.S. plans to fund the controversial Wuhan lab through the year 2024. Joining us now to discuss is Gordon G. Chang, a China expert and also author of The Great U.S.-China Tech War, which you see on your screen there. Gordon, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Emma.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think a lot of people are just wondering, why would the Biden administration continue to fund this lab? And where does this funding really come from?
Well, I really can't explain this because this to me is indefensible. China, in all probability, has a far advanced biological weapons program, and that program has links to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We have a sense of this because in January of last year, China sent its top biological weapons expert, General Chen Wei, to head the P4 biosafety unit at that lab. And I believe that she was there to clean up evidence of a biological weapons program, as well as to clean up any evidence of a leak of coronavirus from that lab, because that lab was doing dangerous gain-of-function experiments. And clearly that does have some link to what is going on with COVID-19 around the world.
When you say clean up evidence, would that fully eliminate any chance of someone getting into that lab and looking at the possibility of what could have been, made there, what sort of wrongdoing might have happened?
I think that General Chen was probably successful in eliminating all evidence. And remember that it was just a little bit after her tour there that they then invited NBC News in for an inspection. That was a publicity campaign. Also was the WHO mission, which was just completed to Wuhan, which went to the lab for a grand total of 3.5 hours, was also another publicity mission. So Beijing has been very careful about this, and it's been working hard to publicize its notion that there was nothing going on at that lab. But it was only after the cleanup efforts.
So does that make you skeptical about what's really happening there?
Absolutely. Because, we can tell from the writings of the People's Liberation Army that they're working on some really weird experiments. So, for instance, in 2017, the PLA's National Defense University put out a publication which talked about a new type of biological warfare of, quote, specific ethnic genetic attacks. And that means that we've got to be very concerned about funding this lab, because in effect, that means we would be funding China's biological weapons efforts against us and the rest of the world.
That's not the only place that U.S. funding is headed. President Biden plans to include announcing an initial $2 billion donation to the World Health Organization's COVAX program. That's going to plan to distribute vaccines around the world. This, again, is coming at the virtual G7 conference, so we're waiting for the official announcement here. But that would reportedly bring the total donation to $4 billion. Again, this global vaccine distribution plan. Gordon, who does this really benefit?
Well, this will benefit the makers of vaccines, and it's probably the COVAX is probably going to distribute China's vaccine, though we've got to see whether U.S. funding will actually help that. But if that's the case, then that's really a bad decision on our part, because the Chinese vaccines are not very effective, and I don't think that they've been proven safe in trials which would meet Western standards. So I hope that the U.S. money is not going to go to support vaccines, which could very well be dangerous. And we know a number of people in China are just refusing to take Chinese vaccines because they know what's going on.
Very interesting. I also want to talk to you about a story that sort of made headlines, but then there was no follow-up question. It was a remark President Biden made about China's actions against the Uyghur population. It was made during a CNN town hall event. Listen to this.
I'm not going to speak out against what he's doing in Hong Kong, what he's doing with the Uyghurs in western mountains of China and Taiwan, trying to end the one China policy by making it forceful. I said, and by the way, he said he gets it. Culturally, there are different norms.
And dismissing that genocide as a cultural norm was very different than how he initially described his phone call that he had with President Xi, that Americans will not accept the actions against the Uyghur population. Why do you think he's now sending this message out?
Yeah, again, I don't know what's in his head, but we've got to look at this. And that is, he often lectures the American public about white supremacy, but he came very dangerously close to issuing a white supremacist statement. And the reason is that saying that crimes against humanity are a result of China's cultural norms, which is really what he was talking about in that clip that you played. Well, that means that China's culture is barbaric. And it also means that China's culture is racist because those crimes are directed against a racial minority. Now, I don't know what was in Biden's head, but when you see what he was conveying, the people in Chinese Americans are absolutely outraged by this because really what he's saying is that Chinese are genetically homicidal. That we are a race of genocidal maniacs. So clearly, Biden needs to clarify those remarks.
Well, I also I'm not sure if everyone is fully aware of truly what extent is taking place with the Uyghur population. It would make you think if you were fully aware, and Gordon, perhaps you could explain just in 30 seconds here, but you would take a different approach than calling it a cultural norm.
Yes, because those are acts of genocide, crimes against humanity, including detaining at least 1 million, maybe 3 million people in concentration camps, separating children and putting them effectively in prisons, institutionalizing slavery. There's also institutionalized rape. And there have been reports of the sexual abuse of minors, all directed against minorities, organ harvesting, a number of other allegations, which we believe to be true. These are atrocities, Emma. And these atrocities are probably worse than those committed by the Third Reich prior to the mass exterminations of 1941. Biden talking about cultural norms, it's inexplicable.
Yeah. Well, we have to leave it at that. But Gordon Chang joining us live on the program. We appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Emma.